Okay, so you guys wanted to know more about dealing with bullying
Hmm.
and how to help your kids through it.
Yeah.
So let's jump right into this deep dive.
Yeah.
We're looking at this article from No More's Kids Health
Hmm.
called Teaching Kids Not to Bully.
Hmm.
Um, and it seemed like a really good resource for parents. So
Yeah, absolutely.
let's dig in.
I think what's so interesting about this article is that it doesn't just jump right into here are the solutions. It actually takes the time to explain like why kids bully in the first place, which I think is a really smart approach.
Right, because if you can figure that out, then you can figure out how to work with your kid better.
Exactly. And there are a lot of different reasons why kids bully. Sometimes it's really about insecurity.
Okay.
So you have a child who maybe is struggling to fit in or struggling with feeling significant in whatever group. And so bullying becomes their way to kind of grasp at a little bit of power or control.
Oh, so it's almost like they're not
Right.
trying to be mean.
Yeah.
It's just them trying to figure out their own thing.
Yeah. It can definitely be like a cry for help that's disguised as aggression.
Ah.
Um, Another thing that this article talks about that I think is really important is that a lot of times kids are mimicking what they see,
Oh, yeah?
especially at home.
Mm-hmm.
So if they're seeing a lot of aggression or if they're seeing conflict that's not being resolved healthily, then they may start to normalize bullying as a way to interact with other people.
That's a good point.
Yeah,
Like, it really makes you think about how you're behaving as a parent
absolutely.
because they're always watching us.
Always watching.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is, and this is a big one, it's social skills.
Mm.
Some kids just haven't developed the tools to navigate disagreements or to handle their emotions constructively.
Right.
And so bullying, because they don't know another way to express themselves or resolve those conflicts, it's kind of a last resort.
Yeah.
Desperate.
I don't always think about it that way.
Right.
You think like, oh, they're just trying to be mean or they're
Yeah.
trying to,
Right.
be in control. But
Yeah.
sometimes they just don't know a better way.
Yeah, and this is where I think the article really gets into some of the practical strategies, and I'm excited to dig into those.
Okay.
Because once you understand these reasons, then you can start to think about, like, okay, what does my child need?
Right.
How can I tailor my approach to help them
Yeah.
develop some of these skills?
Okay, great. Okay, so we kind of uncovered some reasons why bullying happens, which is huge. But what do we as parents actually do about it?
Yeah.
Like, what can we do?
Well, and that's
Yeah, what advice does this article give?
that's where the rubber hits the road, right? And I think what this article does a good job of saying is that, this isn't just a one-time fix. Like,
Right.
you're not just going to say, don't do that,
Yeah.
and everything's fine. You think about, this is about shifting a behavior, and that takes time and it takes consistency. If you're trying to get your kid to put their dishes in the sink after dinner, like one time saying, hey, put your dishes in the sink isn't going to do it. You have to
Right.
reinforce it over and over again.
Be consistent.
Exactly. And bullying is the same way. You have to set those firm boundaries. And then here's the key. You have to stick to them.
Oh, that's hard,
It is.
especially when you're tired.
It is, but you got to be consistent because those kids are smart. They will test the waters.
Yeah, they'll try to get away with it.
Every single time. And that's where the article talks about, taking it seriously from the get-go. So, let's say your child is engaging in cyberbullying,
Okay.
restricting their social media access for a period of time.
That makes sense.
That's a real-world consequence that shows them that this is serious.
And it's something that happens all the time now.
All the time.
It's not just like, oh, you're in trouble at school. Now you're in trouble at home, too.
Exactly. And that's part of, I think, what's tricky for parents is that this online world can feel so separate, but it's not.
No, it's not.
And so we have to treat it with the same level of seriousness and have those consequences.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Um,
But it's not just about consequences. This article also talks about promoting empathy.
okay.
And I think this is so important. Imagine if you could get your kid to step into the shoes of somebody who's different from them.
Right.
Maybe it's a classmate with a disability. Maybe it's a new student who's from a different culture. Whatever it is, helping them to understand and appreciate those differences can be so powerful.
Yeah, but how do you do that?
That's the million-dollar question, right?
Because it's not like a textbook thing. You can just be like,
Right.
here you go.
Exactly. And I think it's about creating opportunities for those meaningful conversations.
Okay.
So maybe you read a book together about a character who's being bullied, or watch a movie that explores these themes of empathy and acceptance. It's
Bro.
about weaving these values into your everyday life.
So it's like, almost like you said, it's not a one-time fix. It's an ongoing
It's a lifestyle.
Yeah.
It's how we live and how we interact with each other, and it's showing them that through our own actions.
Right. And you have to be really intentional, I think, as a parent, too, to make sure that you're doing that.
Yes.
Because it's easy to just let life happen.
Oh, yeah, and not be intentional. And that's where, we forget that they are always watching, and so we have to model that behavior ourselves.
Yeah, for sure. I've also wanted to touch on positive reinforcement, though.
Yes.
Because I feel like a lot of times we're like, you're doing this wrong, stop doing that.
Right, right.
But we don't often say like,
Catch them doing something right.
yeah,
Like, did you see how kind so-and-so was to that person today?
yes,
Like, acknowledge that praise, that behavior, those small acts of recognition can have a huge impact. It's like that whole thing, isn't it? Like what you focus on expands,
100%.
So if we're focusing on the negative all the time, that's what they're going to see if we're focusing on the positive. Hopefully that's what they'll see.
Absolutely. And I think that's a really good segue into something else I wanted to touch on, which is the home environment.
Okay. So we've talked about why bullying happens and some things that we can try to do about it, but like, what about the home environment? Like, how much does what happens at home really affect how a kid acts when they're not at home?
It's huge.
Yeah.
I mean, you think about it, kids are like sponges, right? They're soaking up everything around them. And that includes how we as parents handle our disagreements, how we express our emotions, how we talk about other people.
Even if we're not talking about kids.
Yeah.
Exactly. Even just like how we talk to each other, how we, deal with conflict. If a child is constantly seeing yelling or name calling or aggression as a way to solve problems, right, they're going to start to think that's normal.
Well, yeah, because that's what they see.
Exactly.
They see us doing it.
Yeah, and it's like we can say, don't do what I say.
Right.
But that doesn't really work.
No.
Because ultimately our actions are always going to speak louder than our words.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
So like, what can we do then to make sure that we're teaching them the right things? Because I know as a parent, I've definitely messed up. Like, I've lost my cool in front of my kids more times than I want to admit.
Of course. And I think the biggest thing is just being aware.
Okay.
Like just knowing that they are always watching even when we don't think they are. And then it's about making a conscious effort to model the behavior that we want to see in them.
So we do have to be intentional.
Yes, exactly. And, we're not going to be perfect. We're going to make mistakes.
Right.
But I think it's what we do when we make those mistakes.
Right.
Like, do we apologize to our kids?
Oh.
Do we say, hey, you know what, I really messed up. I'm sorry, I yelled at you. I was feeling stressed, but that's not an excuse. And here's how I could have handled that situation differently.
So we're almost like teaching them how to apologize to their friends, too.
Exactly.
By apologizing to them.
Yes, because we all mess up.
Right.
We're all human. And so it's not about being perfect. It's about showing them how to repair.
Right, and how to move forward.
Exactly.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
I also wanted to ask about sibling rivalry, because I have two kids, and they fight all the time.
Sure.
Like, all the time. So where's the line between just normal sibling stuff and, like...
bullying.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's such a good question, because a little bit of bickering here and there, that's normal.
Totally.
That's siblings.
Yeah.
But I think what we want to pay attention to is the frequency, the intensity, and the power dynamic.
Okay.
So is it always one sibling targeting the other sibling?
Okay.
It escalating quickly every time?
Right.
Is there name-calling, belittling, physical aggression?
So those are all like red flags, basically.
Red flags.
Yeah.
That this is something more than just normal.
Gotcha. So then we kind of go back to what we were talking about before, where we have to set those boundaries and be really consistent with it.
Yeah. And teach those healthy communication skills. Like, how do you express your feelings in a healthy way? How do you listen to the other person's perspective? How do you work together to come up with a solution?
Right. So they're not just yelling at each other.
Exactly.
Which is usually what happens.
And I think the other thing to remember is that, like, we don't have to do this alone.
Oh, that's true?
Like, if you are struggling with this, if the bullying is persisting, if you feel like you're just banging your head against the wall, reach out for help.
Okay.
Talk to a therapist, talk to a school counselor.
There are resources.
There are resources, and they can help you to kind of navigate these choppy waters.
Okay, that's good to know.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I think sometimes we feel like we have to do everything ourselves.
Yes.
But you're right, we don't.
You don't.
Well, this has been great.
Yeah.
I've learned a lot. I feel like just having this conversation has kind of opened my eyes to some things that I can be doing differently.
Yeah, I think that's the first step, right?
Yeah.
It's that awareness, and then from there, we can start to make those changes in our own lives, in our homes, and hopefully create a more positive and kind environment for everybody.
And raise kids who are kind.
Yes,
That's the goal, right?
that's the goal.
Awesome. Well, thanks for joining us on this deep dive, everyone.
Yeah, thank you.
We hope you enjoyed it. And until next time, keep those conversations going.